Good evening. Welcome to the show Let's Talk. I am Shalini Kumar and today we have Zeenah Vilcassim, Marketing Director Bacardi India with us. Zena is a passionate marketer and in 2019 was recognized as one of the Drum's Future 50 Marketing Leaders of Tomorrow. She is also a guest speaker at the London School of Economics. She is part of the Bacardi India's leadership team. In her new role, she is now instrumental in driving the strategic direction and growth for the entire brand portfolio of Bacardi in India. Welcome on Spiritz TV, Zena.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Very happy to be here.
You are an economist and data analyst by background. How much these competencies help in dealing with the complex regulatory and tax related issues of alcoholic beverages in India?
So I am an economist and data analyst by trade. Immediately after my training, I moved into a management consultancy role at Ernst& Young for iBanks, for investment banks. And it was really interesting because I would say that, I've moved across a lot of different industries, throughout my life, but this was probably the one that was the most transferable in terms of all the others that I had learned. Being to see how a piece of what you do fits into the macro lens and how all different elements of an industry are completely codependent has been super important for me. So, in particular, to the regulation and excise in India, I think once lockdown hit in India, it was very, very clear the importance of excise policies and the revenue streams that governments get from alcohol within each state. And that actually plays a very, very interesting part in marketing if you kind of look at how all these things work together. So, what we saw when lockdown happened in India was a couple different things, and all states acted in different ways. Some increased the excise, some put a COVID cess tax, like a tax on tax that was passed on to the consumer. And all of these things worked in different states. So, UP put a COVID cess tax on top of every single bottle, whereas West Bengal increased the excise versus I think Rajasthan did both, increase the excise and put a cess tax. And that plays a really, really important part for marketing when it comes to the disposable income of our consumers. So when we talk about marketing, we talk about two key principles: mental availability and physical availability. So pricing becomes very, very important here. You can distribute your product everywhere and you can do the best marketing plans, but unless your pricing is on point to what the consumer demand is and the economics of the consumer purchasing power is at the time, it becomes really, really hard. So with that, we've kind of had to look at, based on the new policies coming in, what are the best brand state mixes that we can go into? How do we ensure that our pricing is relevant and attuned to the demand that's there? And then how do we look at creating marketing plans in those states that are relevant to the consumer?
So, you took up your role as the new marketing director of Bacardi India at a critical time when the entire world was badly hit in the grip of COVID induced pandemic and all businesses were badly hit. This must have changed your objectives and strategies to some extent. Your comment on that?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because there are definitely elements on business strategy that have changed because of COVID. So, for instance, um, we've got a plan, what we call our best 10 plan. So, at Bacardi, we believe that the next 10 years will be the best 10 years that the company has ever had. So, we kind of had a strategic long term goal of which India is going to be a huge contributor to that. So, by FY30, so 2030, we hope that our business is going to grow fivefold from where it is right now. The good thing about having a long-term vision means that when there are some short-term shocks, we can be very agile within it because we still have that long goal in mind. We know what to play within it. There's lots of different business strategies that we can talk through in terms of how we've adapted and shifted our thinking to attune to the current climate. But I would actually think that the one strategy that shifted the most for me has probably been the human strategy side of it. Everybody's working from home. People are, working 24 hours a day. People are going through really, really tough times. I think the most important learning that we've probably as a business and I've had is, well, how do you change your leadership style and what the business needs based on what your team needs, what the community needs, what people need, and actually be a lot more human in that way and understanding that things that we never probably spoke before that much in business and leadership, like vulnerability, openness, acceptance, all of that kind of stuff, I think is probably the biggest, I guess, strategic shift, that human insight, that human shift that we've probably made as a company, and I myself have made as well.
From handling one brand, Doers Scotch Whisky, as global director to a new role of handling the entire Bacardi India's portfolio must be a huge challenge for you, especially in a high competitive and heavily regulated market of India. Can you please share your experience?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it's so as the global brand director of Doers, responsible for Doers is one of our core six brands that we have within over our 200 strong portfolio, was to create and work on the brand strategy and roll it out in our 90 markets. So it was one brand and then 90 markets where you're rolling out the brand strategy. And now the challenge is it's basically been mirrored, where now it's one market but all the brands that we have within our portfolio. And I think what's different about the roles is the first one is a lot more, it's more strategic in terms of creating that brand strategy, basically being the North Star of Doers, and then working to understand the cultural context and how to localize it. With India, as you've said it before, it's all in the detail. It's knowing the detail of all the regulations. It's knowing the detail of, yes, India is one country, but it's 29 different states with over, 15, 14 official languages, like different food, different cultures. And so it's a very similar challenge, but really I would say it's getting way into the detail and understanding that those nuances, which is something that will take years, really, if I'm being honest, for me to fully get my head around within the Indian market. But it's a challenge that I'm very excited to take on.
So, as you know, Zena, that these are very difficult times due because of COVID, etc. So, how do you intend to build and grow your portfolio in the country, especially when most of the hotels and bars are not fully functional and GTR trade is almost non-existent due to the ban on international flights?
So I think in Q3 of last year, 2020, I think that post the first lockdown, there was a little bit of optimism, I think, that was happening in the market. The trade started opening up again. People were more optimistic about travel. A lot of industry businesses had really, really great quarters during that time. And then, as we all know, unfortunately, that second wave hit harder and arguably one of the hardest markets that's ever been hit during this pandemic. And that has completely shifted and where the optimism was and where we thought was going to come back. You're right. The LHA, which was where we introduce our markets and introduce our brands, and GTR is where we put out, the premium products, discovery around new dark spirits, etc. All of that went away. But one trend that we know globally across the world that came about during this time was that in times of uncertainty, consumers choose certainties or they gravitate towards certainties. So we've seen that trusted brands that have been there for a long time in market, tried and trusted brands have really, really stood the test of time. It's something that we've seen especially true in some of our markets like the US and Western Europe. In India, we're in a quite interesting place because, as you know, we have some very big strongholds like Breezer, Bacardi, Black by Bacardi, Limon, market leaders in gin with Bombay. But at the same time, we were also trying to seed and grow our whiskey portfolio, Dewar's, the malts, William Lawson's. We were also trying to launch new categories like the premium rum range with Reserva, premium tequila with Patron, new products like Fiero. And so, yeah, it was initially quite scary. But I think, given our three family values, fearless being one of them, family and founders, everyone kind of put their hat on and tried to look and see where we can find new opportunity spaces for our consumers. So we kind of saw three key trends here. So the first is people that had disposable income more so after a year or so of being locked in, etc., were looking for more premium products. So we saw a premiumization and an uptrade trend. But at the same time, we also saw a downtrade trend. So more of the budget conscious consumers were moving towards, from standard scotch maybe to IMFL or down to country liquor, etc. We also saw an element of the off trade shifting. So previously, LHA would be where you discover these brands, GTR would be where you get your premium products. And then we saw that there were some premium off trade outlets that were trying to tap into that demand. They were stocking more premium products, things that could be discoverable. A lot of high net worth individuals were looking there for their delivery. So they accelerated on the discernment, the types of premium products they have, discovery, new products that you would usually find in GTR or LHA, and then really upped their delivery so that it can be delivered in bulk for these events. And then the similar thing is we saw also education. Consumers were becoming much more educated around different types of spirits. The average person now knew a lot more about the different botanicals in a gin, and what made it important, what the process is of certain whiskeys and how do you age stuff and all of that kind of stuff. So for us, it was actually a huge opportunity to tap into that section of stuff. How do we help our trade partners that are trying to grow in their premium off-trade retail accounts? How do we give them the right product that they need, put it in the hands of consumers, let them discover stuff? And then from a marketing point of view as well, it was how do we educate these consumers around how to make interesting cocktails and drinks, things that weren't really happening before. Everyone kind of became a mixologist when they were at home and they learned a lot about this. So for that, I don't think those two things are going to go away. I think this premium off-trade retail accounts is still going to be quite big. Consumers wanting to lean into more mixology cocktail experiences at home is still going to be big. But we might see a shift in terms of what is the role of LHA premium on-trade accounts and GTR in the future. Maybe the expectation in lighthouse accounts, premium on-trade, becomes more elevated. Maybe it's a bit more about theater. It's a bit more about the niche experiences that you can't have when you're making a cocktail at home. And GTR, whilst we believe the premium off trade is still going to exist and grow, maybe GTR becomes about limited editions, maybe early releases before they go into the premium on trade. So the channels won't go away, but I think it will be interesting to see how they shift.
So as we talked about GTR on trade and off trade business, can you tell me, do you have something for like home appreciation or home sessions for normal consumers, HNI, as you rightly said?
Yes, it's actually interesting the global consumer trends that have happened during COVID, especially when you're coming to those home experiences, have been around three things. They've been around curiosity and at home. So we've created some new initiatives, but we've also adapted some of our older initiatives to kind of address those three key themes in the home experience. So we have our Bacardi NH7 Weekender, which is one of the biggest festivals in India. We've made that virtual, still experiencing big names from the comfort of your own home. We leverage interesting technology so consumers can connect with their friends and have a party whilst they're watching this virtually. With Dewars, we've launched Dewars Home Edit, so bringing the cocktail experience to your home. A bartender with all the garnishes and everything that you would expect to get in a bar, but entertained for your home group. So something that you get that is convenient, but it's also curious. It's not a natural, normal experience you'll be able to have at home. And then we've also looked at doing, Breezer Vivid Shuffle, trying to engage with this hip hop competition from the comfort of your own home, getting registrations, having a two-way communication with our consumers. And very, very excitingly, next week, the 20th of August, we're actually launching Casa Bacardi. So this is Rum Month, Shalini, which is all, we've done so many things around Bacardi, getting people excited about the mixability and versatility of specifically Carta Blanca. But to kind of celebrate the culmination of Rum Month, we're launching a fully AR augmented reality festival with our partner Sansar. So within this festival, which is going to happen on the 20th of August, you can sign into this virtual island world. You can create your own avatar. You can hang out with your friends, and then you can also at the same time play games with them, and then also see these big name artists like Gully Gang, etc., perform. So that's something that we're very, very excited about next week happening.
Great. So as we all know that Bacardi has a very impressive portfolio of categories and brands. Give us some idea of which brands are in your prime focus for the domestic markets.
So Bacardi as globally has a portfolio of about 200 brands. In India, however, we operate with a lot less, which means it's a lot more headroom to grow for us as a company. But first and foremost, we will always, always, always be listening to our consumers. So where can we really, really add value? And within that, we kind of have our three buckets. We have our core, which is Bacardi, Breezer, Bombay, where we've got a high market share, B plus, etc. We'll be looking to reinvigorate Carta Blanca, focusing on its versatility, etc. But there's a huge, huge opportunity that we have. As you know, India is the number one market for whiskey, rum, and brandy. So really trying to flex our whiskey credentials. We've obviously got Dewar's and Lawson's in market. Both are amazing brands on their own with their own variants, but we're trying to strengthen it with a range. So you'll see us introduce, which we've already done in some states, William Lawson's 13, which is the premium version of William Lawson's. And we've also got in market Dewar's White Label 12, 15, 18, but we want to add 25 to that. And actually, we're also going to bring in the world's best whiskey, as voted by the IWSR, called Dewar's Double Double 32. The bottle is absolutely beautiful, as you can see. And it's been quadruple aged 4 times. Limited stock, and we have gotten some allocation for India. So we're very, very excited about really, really strengthening our whiskey credentials over the course of the next 10 years.
So, how do you intend to communicate with your target consumers, especially when there is a kind of fatigue due to information overload at the moment, which can lead to disengagement, especially online?
Yes, especially because digital has been adapted by everybody and is a big part of content consumption, especially during COVID. It's very, very easy to get digital information fatigue or just be cluttered through lots of different campaigns as well that are happening out there. But at Bacardi, we always, I mean, sure you've heard this, but we always keep consumer at the heart, right? We're driven by where we can add value. So looking at those kind of 3 key themes that we've seen before around comfort, curiosity, and convenience, we've really, really looked to add value to our consumers when they need it the most. So we've streamlined a lot of our platforms. So we focused all of our brands to have clear messaging, clear platforms, and focus on that. And then also we listen and learn from our consumers. So we've taken a very strong M&E approach to all of our campaigns. So we will look to see what is working, what isn't working, what consumers are responding to with content, what they aren't responding to, and we'll adapt our messaging and content as we grow and learn with our consumers as well. So it's starting with consumers and then ending with consumers in terms of listening and adapting based on what they're telling us and what they need.
Okay. So, do you agree that digital mediums do not have boundaries of metros and non-metros? How much is your focus on Bharat that lives in tier 2 and 1 cities, 1 and 2 cities?
Yeah, so you're completely right. We've digital. There's a lot of trends that were kind of bubbling under the surface that through COVID got massively accelerated. One of that was the adoption of digital platforms pan India happened accelerating scale during COVID and the pandemic. So we've really tried to be more inclusive with our digital campaigns and where we're activating it through our program. So for instance, Breezer Vivid Shuffle is Breezer's platform, which is the biggest hip hop competition that we have in India. And the whole purpose of it is to get as many participants and registrations as possible to culminate in this final grassroots hip hop competition that is judged by our 2 ambassadors, Kriti Senon and Vijay Devrakonda. Now, usually when we would do this, we would have registrations, from your metro cities, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Maybe we would have a Pune, Chandigarh, etc. But last year, we really, really focused on geo-targeting a lot of these campaigns at some of our tier 2 cities as well. So for the first time, when we usually get registrations for maybe about 15 different cities, we had about 50 different cities registered. So then we had, Dehradun, Ranchi, Jaipur, places that we normally wouldn't get registrations from. And being inclusive in our digital communication has helped do that. So that's something that we are going to further on this year as well when we launch Breezer Shuffle later this month, is be much more inclusive, not just of our metro and tier 1, but also our tier 2 cities and beyond that as well.
So, how Bacardi is assisting a huge F&B workforce that is facing job-related and mental stress? Do you have some strategies or plans for them?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, Bacardi is a family company, and because of that, values like caring and trust and community become extremely, extremely important. So even in, all the time, but especially in challenging times, the health, well-being of our employees, plus the communities in which we operate in, become extremely, extremely important. So there were a few things that we did from a community standpoint, a few things that we did from the trade perspective, and also a few things that our brands did as well, which were really interesting during this time. So first and foremost, it was very important for us to contribute to the community. So we turned our co-packing unit in Telangana to create 70,000 liters of hand sanitizer and donate them to local hospitals. We also raised globally $3 million for a Raise Your Spirits campaign, which helped donate to the trade and support them throughout. And then at a more local level, we also worked with our Lighthouse account team, worked with our customer marketing team and our finance team to help give back to some of our on-trade partners whose employees have lost their jobs. So we worked with our finance team to ensure that support and money was being directly given to the people that needed help through their Aadhaar card. So even if you didn't have a bank account, even if it wasn't easy to give those funds, we worked to find ways where we can help and support. And then through our brand platforms as well, we have two brand platforms that we kind of shifted during the time of COVID. So for Grey Goose, we have House of Change, which is all about upskilling bartenders within the industry. But this time we used it in a virtual format to either have bartenders learn new skills whilst they weren't working, or upskill or continue on, or at least maintain some of those skills if they weren't being able to practice them in their every single day job. And then with Bombay Sapphire, we have the Creators Hub, which is a grant that is given to bartenders to connect them with other passions. So when COVID happened, we were looking at, okay, well, outside of the bartending world, do you have other passions where we can connect you with key experts and have a chat about what that would look like? And there was a few conversations that turned into jobs, for instance, within the bartending world, outside of the bartending world, etc., which we thought was a really nice way to bring the brands, what the brand stands for, to life during a very challenging time for the F&B trade.
So, what is your outlook for Bacardi India in the current and the next financial years, as these are the times not for a long term planning?
Yes, well, like I mentioned before, we're lucky that we had our best 10 strategy put in place, before COVID had hit. And for us in India, that specifically meant growing the business 5 times fold from where we are right now, which meant that you had a North Star that you can kind of look towards, which made it easier to mitigate the short-term shock. So whilst the next, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and there's until we get, the right vaccination uptakes and the right healthcare systems in place, we're still going to be living in a state of flux, but we still have that end goal in mind. So with us, it's ensuring that we're listening to consumers, listening to what people need, really trying to add value, protecting our employees, their health and safety, both mental and physical health, and our partners. We truly believe that then we can be agile and move quickly and be able to adapt to our constant state of flux, which we're in right now.
Great, Zena. Thank you for sharing your insights about Bacardi India and hope to see you soon in India. Thanks very
Yes,
much.
looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Shalini.